They say that statistically, people who have committed crimes and been in jail or perhaps even prison have what they call a high reciprocity rate. Usually it's in the mid 70s. Last time I checked, which was few years ago, that people that commit crimes, people that have been in jail and or prison, unfortunately have about a 70-75%, maybe higher percentage rate of reciprocity, which means committing the same or similar crime, otherwise getting back involved with the criminal justice system again. It's like a cycle. Now, there's various reasons for this. When I was involved in ministry to inmates, I was the Jewish chaplain for the Tarrant County Sheriff's Office. You know, I looked into this, and I saw it firsthand, talk to people. There's different reasons why this happens, but probably the number one reason, I don't know what the percentage would be, maybe 80% of the reason, maybe. It's significant, whatever the percentage is. The reason is because of who their neighbors are, meaning who their friends are. And when I would counsel with inmates and try to help them to the best of my ability, live normal lives, if you will, good, healthy lives. My whole purpose there, aside from, people that were interested in Jewish faith, my real purpose was to try to make sure that, to the extent possible, these people with whom I was dealing, men and women, didn't come back there. Whatever happened, whether it did happen or didn't happen, that it would be resolved to one extent or the other, and whenever the situation was over, that they wouldn't return. And therefore, one of the things I would always counsel them was, you've got to change your friends. You've got to change who you're around. And the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, is that one thing that we don't understand, I don't think, or we don't appreciate perhaps, or maybe we do, maybe we don't, I don't know. But the reality is that we can be influenced in a positive or negative way depending upon who we're around, who we choose to be our neighbors, who we choose to be our friends. And people also have this delusion, if you'll permit me to use that word, that we can change somebody else by being a positive influence in their life. And unfortunately, that doesn't usually happen. And it's kind of strange, isn't it? You would think that, well, if I can be a light to, and you can be a light to people, but there's this strange phenomenon in that we can be a light to people on an acquaintance level. But when we choose to make bad neighbors, bad company, our friends, even if you're a top-notch Zodic, that will pull you down. And listen, what I'm telling you today is not something that only, religious people are going to say. This is something that you're going to hear in the corporate world. I mean, I was in the corporate world for a long time, and went to all the seminars and so forth on, in my profession. And this is a mantra that you're going to hear. If you want to be successful, hang around successful people. If you want to be positive, hang around positive people. If you want to be whatever you want to be, whatever it is, pick your whatever. You need to hang around people who are good at that or whatever. If you don't, they're going to suck the life out of you. And so the problem that we have a lot of times is that this kind of touches back to something I was talking about yesterday, because a lot of times as people of faith, we are generally empathetic and, we want the best in people and so forth. We tend to sometimes try to hang out with people who are obviously not right. we see that they're on a destructive path, and we want to hang out with them because we feel like if we hang out with them, then somehow we'll pull them back. And even though they're in direct rebellion, and it has the opposite effect. And instead of us pulling them back, they pull us with them. And just trust me, guys. Listen, I didn't start doing this yesterday. Okay, I've got, between Rabbi and myself, between the two of us, we probably have 50, 60 years of ministry. Okay. You throw Zake and Yigal in the mix, throw Zake and Rayford into the mix, that number starts climbing into the hundreds. Ladies and gentlemen, you got to trust us here. Okay. Whatever your theories are that are opposed to what I'm saying, they're wrong. Okay. And I don't know how to say that I don't know how to say that sweetly. But today's message is really important because what I'm talking about today, which is related to our Torah portion, obviously, related to our Aliyah, it can save your life. It really can. And it can really save you. It can really help you. And to not listen to what I'm talking about today, and to just believe in a theory that is been believed by many and always proven to be wrong. It's kind of like communism and socialism. Communism and socialism sounds really good and looks really great on paper, and it intrigues a lot of people because it seems so sweet, and it fails every time. Socialism and communism has never been successful in any environment, and it will always fail, and it's designed to fail. But it looks and sounds really great, and people love it, right? Everybody gets the same. Everybody tries. No, there's no competition or whatever, blah, blah. And so what happens is everybody in their minds, they're thinking we're all going to live in mansions. But in reality, we all end up living in cardboard boxes. We're all going to eat steak dinners. No, in reality, we all, get a cold, hard sliced piece of bread and some dirty water. And so it sounds good and it looks good. And I just want to be around people and love them back into the kingdom and blah, blah, blah. And the reality is they suck you out of the kingdom. I know it sounds strange, isn't it? But it's true. It's true. And so what are we talking about? Good neighbors. We have to have good neighbors, people who are healthy, whole, and holy. We need them in our life. Can we influence people? Yes, but not be their buddy. We can influence people by just being good people and letting them come to us, and we give them godly counsel. Do I have acquaintances, friends, if you will? I use that word loosely. Do I have friends in my life who are, well, let's speak frankly, who are heathens? Yes. Are they my buddies? Do I go out to dinner with them and hang out with them and go to movies with them and whatever? No. Am I around them at certain points? Yes. And that's the extent of my involvement in their life. Why? Because I'm wise enough to know I'm not all wise. Please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I just have wisdom in this area that if I start hanging out with them and buddy with them, then I'll become like them. You say, Rabbi, how can that be? I thought you were a Zadik. You have more strength. Guys, we're about to find out that this is what happened with Korach. It has no idea. It makes no difference. If you think yourself to be some super exotic or whatever, it doesn't matter. This is the human condition. If you want to be successful, hang around with successful people. If you want to be healthy, hang around with healthy people. If you continually allow unhealthy people to be your buddy, you will become unhealthy. Now, why am I bringing this up? Well, because interestingly, here in a few weeks, we're going to be talking about Korach. It's part of the Torah cycle. There's an entire Torah portion dedicated to Korach, okay? And I've taught about this till I'm blue in the face about Korach, and inevitably somebody joins Korach's camp in life. It's not unique to our congregation. It happens in congregations all across the world, always happens, but nevertheless, we keep talking about it, and hopefully people listen. The question becomes, how did Korach get started? Well, who is Korach, by the way? Well, Korach is a guy who will eventually lead a rebellion against Moses. He will have a lot of people come to his side, and many of whom are leaders. In fact, most of them are leaders. And so it bolsters Korach's case. Look, you got Korach, and he's got 250 leaders who are basically against Moses. I mean, he's got to be right? And of course, what happens to Korach and all his cronies? They get lit up, and they go out in a blaze of glory, and God smokes them, fries them, and basically, it's not good, right? But they had a big following. I mean, they're all leaders. What does that tell you? Right? Yeah. And so, but the question becomes, how did this happen? How do these people get sucked into this? And interestingly, in our commentary today, it brings this up. It brings this up about neighbors, because it's talking about the tribes of the Levites, right? It's talking about the Levites. It's talking about their position in the camp, and it gets into the concept of the sons of Reuben and their connectivity and where they were. And so today's lesson really is about having good neighbors, having good people in your life. And when you have people in your life that are not in a good place, you've talked to them or whatever, you're like, look, man, you got to make tshuva in that area. You've got to get over this, whatever. And they refuse to, but yet they want to pretend like they're A-okay and you should just be their friend. You've got to learn how to disconnect. You've got to learn how to disconnect. Everybody loves Paul, right? And Paul, it always shocks people when I bring this up, because it's weird, because people like, how it is. People treat Paul's letters as if they are the word of the living God, except when they don't want to. And so Paul, he's always viewed as this super grace guy who's just super sweet. And no, don't do Torah. Golly, if you want to eat the food that's offered to idols, eat it. If you don't want to eat it, don't eat it. And don't even bother somebody. Just everybody to que sera, sera, kumbaya, to each his own. We're just super sweet. The Torah is for today if you want it to be, unless you don't want it to be. Hey, listen, when I'm around Gentiles, I'm a Gentile. When I'm around Jews, I'm a Jew. When I'm around idol worshipers, I'm like an idol worshiper. When I'm like a holy chameleon, right? I'm super sweet. I'm just dripping like honey, right? That's how many people they just love Paul. God, he's just so awesome. Except when he says, hey, listen, when you have somebody in your life that's not doing right, and they're supposed to make teshuvah and they didn't, and yet they're trying to pretend like they're okay, have nothing to do with them. Like, don't even eat with them. What? Yeah. If you've rebuked somebody and you said, look, man, what you're doing is not right, and you need to get right. What you did is not right, and you need to get right. And they don't get right. They basically ignore you until you go pound sand in a sweet way, but they want to continue to be your buddy. Paul said, drop them like a bad habit and have nothing to do with them. And I've told that to people in times past, and they're like, that's not sweet. I can't do that. And of course, these are the same people who believe that those words are the words of the living God, which they're not, of course. But this is what I'm trying to say is Paul is saying his opinion as a rabbi is like, look, don't have anything. Now, why does Paul say that? Does Paul say that because he's just a meanie? Does he say that because he's, arrogant and judgmental and super religious? No. Paul says that because he knows something you don't know. And that is because you'll become like them. Yeah. So is anything I'm saying right now resonating with anybody? I mean, seriously. It's true, though. Now, you can believe it not to be true, and that's okay, and that's your privilege. However, it is true. Now, let's look at something. We can believe whatever we want to believe, guys. But that doesn't make it true. You know what I'm saying? Like reality is reality. All right. So did I say like this video yet? I always get about 10 minutes, 15 minutes in, I'm like the video, share it with your friends. Subscribe to us. I should say that earlier. My apologies. So let's look at this insight here about who's your neighbor. Let's just cut right to the chase. This is going to be an insight to Numbers chapter 3 and verse 29. Can I tell you a story before I read this? So when I going back a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, when I first got into pastoral ministry, rabbis are pastors. I mean, it even says this in rabbinic literature, but that's not, I just want to point this out. Like, we make a distinction. I'm a rabbi, not a pastor, because I'm not a Christian and so forth, but I get that. But in terms of actually the job, rabbis are pastors. And, but anyway, when I first got into pastoral ministry, before that I was doing some other things in ministry, but I didn't have like a congregation. But once I had a congregation, I developed, friends with other pastors and so forth. And I become really good friends with a man who was just a great guy. He's passed away now, and he was the pastor of a large church in the area that we lived. And he and I just became friends. We kind of worked together for a little bit. Because I did a side thing with him. We were hospice chaplains for a little while together, and anyway, so we got to know each other, and he became really a mentor for me because he had so many years experience as a pastor and dealing with people. And in those early years, just like today, frankly, pastoring people is a tough job. It's tough. And man, I had a lot of, I spent a lot of time in his office, just kind of crying and asking his advice, and, looking at him and going, what? I mean, what happened here? And anyway, he told me this interesting story. Because I was talking about a couple or somebody back in those days who was with us until they weren't. And it was, and I wanted to go after them. I wanted to run them down and, fall at their feet and say, what did I do wrong? Y'all left without any notice. What happened? I don't know what's going on. As far as I know, everything was great. Now you're gone. I mean, what, help me with this. And he said, let me tell you the story. He said, had this couple in our congregation, and they were just a problem. They were a problem. They were instigators of strife and complainers and constantly critical. Just like we were talking about yesterday, there are people who were rarely part of the solution and almost always part of the problem. But he said, I was a young pastor back then, and they left, and I pursued them. And I, went after them, and I sat down with them, and I talked with them, and blah, 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 blah. And I got them to come back. And when they came back, they caused 9 times more hell when they came back than when they were here the first time. And he said, and I was in my office one day, and I'm just on my knees, and I'm praying and crying out to God, and I'm crying, and I'm, about this couple, and help, oh God, help. And he said to me, God spoke to me so clearly and said, look, I got rid of them the first time, and you brought them back. And so this is what you have. And he said to me, so don't ever chase people. When they leave, let them leave. Now, some of you are listening today, and you've never been in this position. You've never been in this role, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, that's harsh. My goodness. And you're also probably misunderstanding. So let me explain. Because what he said was like golden coins dropped in my lap. And I've never forgotten it. And that was probably close to 20 years ago. Here's what he meant. And this goes back to, who are our friends? That couple needed to make teshuva. Now, did he mean that he would never let them back in the doors of his congregation again? No, no. But that couple needed to return in teshuva. They needed to return with tears in their eyes, asking God to forgive them. Not groveling at the pastor's feet, no, but in teshuva. And what he was trying to say is that when you try to bring people back to your congregation or to your life, and they haven't made teshuva, they're just going to bring in 9 times more hell than they did the first time. And that's what you and I need to understand, ladies. And I've never forgotten that message. So do we leave the doors open for people in our lives to return and become friends again? Sure. Yes. We don't have the privilege of turning people away who want to return. However, they have to return in teshuva. In teshuva. And that goes for us too, guys. And so I never forgot that message. So I hope that blesses you because it blessed me. And if you don't understand, send us a message. We'll talk about it further. If you don't get it, we can talk about it further. But I hope that helps you. And maybe there's people who are listening today because sometimes we have people who watch this program who are leaders of communities. They just don't ever say anything. Maybe that helps you. People have to make teshuva, gentlemen and ladies. And those are the people we want to be buddy-buddy with. And if somebody's in your life and they're not right, they haven't made teshuva and you know they need to, you've got to disconnect. Now, you got to disconnect. I don't know how else to say it. You can find that balance. You can be there. You can leave a lifeline out there, right? But you got to just trust me on this. Korach. Okay. Now let's read this and let's get down to the nitty-gritty. It says here, in verse 29, the families of the clan of Kehat camped to the south side of the tabernacle. Now it says here, it starts out in the commentary. Okay. Woe to the wicked and woe to his neighbor. Woe to the wicked and woe to his neighbor. Ladies and gentlemen, a wicked person, because a lot of times we say wicked and we're thinking like axe murderer, wicked Adolf Hitler, wicked, I don't know, drug dealer, child molester. Okay, yeah, but ladies and gentlemen, also wicked is somebody who needs to make tshuva and they haven't and they know it and you know that they know it because y'all talked about it and they refuse to do it. That's also wicked. Somebody who's like, yeah, blah, you need to make tshuva. It's not right what you did. You got to make tshuva on that. You need to go talk to dad and tell him you were wrong. You need to go talk to mom and tell her you were wrong. You need to go hey, listen, it's not right for you to be upset with Susie. It's not Susie's fault. It's your fault. You need to go talk to Susie and apologize. And they're like, well, I'm not apologizing to her. That's also wicked. You can't hang out with a person like that. You say, I can't hang out with them? No. Why? Because it will come on to you. Now, you can believe me or not believe me. That's your business. It doesn't change the reality. Okay? Woe to the wicked and woe to the neighbor. The tribe of Reuben also camped on the south near the clan of Kehat. The tribe of Reuben also camped on the south near the clan of Kehat. Consequently, listen to this. Consequently, Dathan and Aviram and 250 other members of the tribe of Reuben joined with Korach, one of the clans of Kehat, in his mutiny against Moses. So you see, what's being taught here is that because the Reubenites and these particular Reubenites were basically neighbors of Korach's clan, this is why they got sucked into the rebellion. And now, you could look at this pragmatically and you could say, well, but isn't this where they were positioned and that it wasn't really their choice? Yeah, that's true. We can look at it but the bigger thing is we're looking at this from the standpoint of our lives. Are there Korachs in our life? Are there Korachs in our life? Do you know why people don't want to talk face to face? You ever had somebody in your life that got sideways with you and you don't really understand why they got sideways, and you've reached out to them and said, "Can we just have a sit down, face to face talk and talk about why what the deal is going on here?" And rarely do they want to do that. Do you know why? I'll tell you why. Because they know they're wrong and they don't want to confront you face to face, because they know that when they do that, you're going to set everything straight and call them out on it. And all of their issues are going to be met with truth. And that truth is going to destroy their issues. And they know it. And therefore, they don't want to meet with you because they like being where they are in their fantasy of disgruntlement. This is why. And so, as you'll see in the issue with Korach never sat down and met with Moses and to confront his issues, right? Because he knew that Moses is going to, use truth to destroy. And I say destroy, I don't mean it meanly, but he's going to destroy those Egyptians. And Korach doesn't want that. Why? Because Korach has another goal, and that is, in this case, and in Korach's case, his goal is to, basically become the leader, start his own ministry or whatever, be the minute. And so therefore he needs this conflict in order to create a pretext to establish his authority. And this is the whole thing, right? But again, getting back to the Reubenites, they have no stake in this game, but they hung out with Korach and his followers. The precursor to the Korach rebellion is talked about in today's Aliyah. That's the point, right? And so it's a good idea for us to have good neighbors. We want to have good. We want to be around healthy people. Did I say perfect people? No, none of us are perfect. We all have, things that we're working on, each and every one of us, but healthy in that we recognize those things and we are, in fact, working on them. So it says here, continuing on, in rabbinic sources, there are three perspectives on the effect of in rabbinic sources, there are three perspectives on the effect our neighbors can have on us. Neighborly influence is superficial. We may be swept up in our neighbors' evil schemes and even share their punishment, as in this case, the rebels from the camp of Reuben were swallowed up with Korach, but their influence does not in and of itself penetrate into our psyche. Okay, that's possibility number one. It's superficial. We get caught up in their schemes, but we are not, it doesn't exactly penetrate down into us. Now, neighborly influence can affect how we think and feel. In this case, this would mean that the rebels from the camp of Reuben were influenced by Korach to become what they were not beforehand, which is rebels. How does this happen, by the way? Somebody has an issue and they're like, blah, blah, blah. That wasn't right. That wasn't right. I went over to Susie's house and, she served tea to all the ladies first. And then she gave me my tea last. And every time I go over there, that's how it is. I always get my tea last and she gives tea to everybody else. And she just acts like I'm like not even there. And then she gives me my tea. Don't you think that's really rude of her? And the person who's listening, right, who doesn't know anything, she's not there. There's always two sides of the story, by the way. And so they're listening and they're like, yeah, that doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem right. That, you always get your tea last. That is kind of rude. I agree with you. And so right there, she got sucked in to this offense, right? And then what her friend, who's the Lashon Hara person, what she does is she'll go back to Susie and she'll say, I'm no longer going to be your friend. And by the way, there's many people who've come to me and agree that you're rude. And Susie's like, what? Many people have come to you and agree. And they haven't agreed. All that's happened is that the person went around and said, don't you agree with me that that's rude? Yeah. You see, many people have come to me and they think you're rude. Guys, my gosh, if I had a dime for every time that somebody said to me that they're somehow the representative of the community and everybody's come to them and they agree that this is true, if I had that, I never, by the way, listen to that because I always think to myself, since when did you become the community representative? Like they're all flocking to you now to voice their concerns. Why did they go to a Zakin? Why don't they go to one of the Zakin's wives? Well, I mean, why you? I never believe it. You know why? Because it's never true. Ever. Never has been true. Like if it was true, it'd be like the first time in history that it was true, right? But this is how it happens, and this is how people get sucked in. And you don't know, you're just sitting there talking to somebody, and they're talking about how they get their tea last, and they feel hurt. And you start feeling hurt for them because you think, but what you don't know is the other side of the story, which is whatever. Whatever the other side of the story is, you have no idea. So it says, so here's the other way we get influenced. Neighborly, it says, I'm reading, by the way, from the Kehil Tumash, in case you're wondering. Kehil Tumash. Neighborly influence reveals inherent predispositions. Now, this is where we talked about reciprocity with people that have been in jail before and so forth. This kind of gets into that a little bit. So it says neighborly influence reveals inherent predispositions. We settle next to our neighbors because even prior to our contact with them, we shared similar characteristics. We were drawn to them because of their deep similarity to us. Our physical proximity to them then causes these common traits to surface. In the present case, this would mean that the camp of Reuben possessed a propensity towards rebellion even before Korach began his revolt. Yikeser, yikeser, yikeser. Okay, this is why we talked yesterday where we need to judge ourselves as opposed to judging other people. Okay, we already know that, but rarely do we put it in practice. When we say know them by their fruits, it's like I said yesterday, we say know them by their fruits. We're almost always thinking about somebody else. I would venture to guess that rarely do we apply that to ourselves. But in reality, we need to be looking at our own fruit baskets, and we need to be judging ourselves accordingly. And we need to be saying, what are judging our lives by actual effects, actual actions. Okay, result-oriented living. Now, in the same way that we know that other people need to make teshuvah in certain areas, whatever the case, right? In the case of the example I gave you, the lady who got her tea last, one way she needs to make teshuvah is, first of all, don't be prideful. But if you're talking to such a person and they say, Susie always gives me my tea last, one of the first things that as their friend that you need to say to them is say, have you talked to Susie about this? Have you expressed to her that you feel slighted? Because, I guarantee you that if you express that to her, she's probably going to have an explanation for you and, problem solved. And the person says, no, I haven't talked to her yet. Then why are you talking to me? I mean, I love you and you're my friend and I do care about your problems. But really, you should go talk to them. And if they're not willing to talk to them, then that's a big, huge, mega red flag. But can I just tell you that if somebody is not willing to talk to the person, right? So you're trying to mediate between, and you're like, well, have you talked to them? And they said, no, I haven't. That is a humongous red flag. Okay. I'm not saying that they're Korach, but I'm saying that is like danger, Will Robbins. Okay. Now, going back to this situation here. And as much as we look at people and we say, you need to make teshuvah, this, ladies and gentlemen, is why we need to make teshuvah. We need to make teshuvah because here's what the Kehil Tumash is trying to say here is, if we have neighbors, if we have friends in our life that have issues, then we have to recognize that we're drawn to them for some reason. It's like people, and I had a gentleman in my congregation one time, and he had been through some marriage issues, and he was a fairly young man, and at his fairly young age, he was going through his third divorce. And I was counseling with him, and he said that he goes, I don't know, you know, I tend to attract crazy. I've heard that before from people, right? Um, and the unfortunate reality there is because there must be we talked about it. There must be a little crazy in you. I mean, just it is. It is. We all have this, right? When we attract a similarity, like kinds, you know, birds of the feather flock together. And so, this is why we need to make teshuva. And so he and I talked about it. Look, you have to identify what it is in you that attracts that. And eventually this person found somebody else, and they seem to be doing well. So, I'm just saying that we have to make teshuva as well. Again, what's the fruit in our basket? If we find ourselves constantly around people who are not so great, they're gripey, they cause dissension, they're negative, or whatever. If we find ourselves, and that's kind of the people we hang around, we need to take a step back and look in the mirror and go, what's wrong with me? Why am I gripey and a person of dissension? Because we can delude ourselves very easily. You and I both know this. We can delude ourselves and think, well, I'm great. I'm here to be their doctor. It's not good, right? So again, the focus comes back to us. So if we're why do they feel comfortable talking? Who was somebody said to me this one time? It bothered them. This is such a word of wisdom. Somebody said, I can't, it doesn't matter who, but it bothered them that this person felt comfortable talking to them lashon hara about their friend. And the person is realizing this, and they said to me, it all of a sudden it like dropped into my spirit. Why does this person feel comfortable talking to me, smack about so and so? Why do they feel like that's okay? They shouldn't feel like that's okay. And I thought, wow, that's a really great way to look at it. So when people are talking smack to us about somebody else, we need to ask ourselves, why do they feel like this is okay? What's in me that draws that? God is good all the time. These aren't easy things to talk about. The last couple of days, maybe in the last 3 days, they're not easy things, because this is the nitty gritty, and it cuts against a lot of what we think. It cuts against a lot of what we want to think and want to believe about ourselves and maybe even other people. But you can't convince me otherwise. I'm kind of on this topic somewhat unteachable. I mean, not that I'm not unteachable. I don't mean that literally, but the reality is, what I'm talking about here, ladies and gentlemen, has been forged by decades of experience, and it is what it is. This is the type of thing we have to understand about the human condition and people. So, just to round this out, it says here, this teaches us, and we'll just kind of conclude with this. Okay, this teaches us that the way to avoid being dragged into a dispute, because ultimately this group was pulled into the dispute of Korach. This is where all this is going, right? It's called about the camp of the Levites. This teaches the way to avoid being dragged into a dispute is by studying and living according to the Torah and its teachings. And the way to connect to God through studying the Torah is by distancing oneself from any form of contention. Distancing ourselves from any form of contention. Somebody comes to you and they've got gripes and complaints. Your first response, this is the ninja move I want you to learn. Somebody comes to you and they're like, blah, 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 cry, cry, cry. The ninja move, I want you you reach into your pocket, you grab that ninja throwing star, the first thing I want you to say to them is, Have you talked to the person? If the answer is no, then you need to find out in some sweet, kind, gentle way, however you can do that, that you need to let them know to please don't ever speak to you again about this issue unless and until you actually have a face-to-face with the person with whom you're complaining about. And the reason for that is that it prevents you from getting sucked into a dispute. It prevents you from being burned to a crisp like Korach and his buds. And more importantly, if they will talk to the person, then the issue will be resolved 99.9% of the time. I guarantee it. And instead of creating all this hubbub, they just talk to the person and the problem's solved. It'll be solved just like that. And it's amazing. It's like a miracle. But if they don't do that, that's a red flag. Has this been good? Does this help you at all? I hope it does. This is life experience here, and it talks about it. It's all part of the Torah portion. This is the precursor, as I said, to Korach. When we get to Korach, obviously this will be brought up again because that's the whole reason Korach started. Of course, then we'll learn about On and his wife, which is also a great story. End of our Aliyah today. Thank you so much for being here. Be blessed. Be healthy. Be whole. Be holy. Let's look at our baskets. Check our fruit. Let's check our teshuvah. And we have to be helpful and real. The way we can be helpful with people is to, push them towards the path of truth, right? Just like we're pushing ourselves. God bless all of you. Look forward to seeing you mañana.